Alright everyone, so it's been a while since we talked about Demon Slayer on the channel, and out of all times we could have done it in the past, now more than ever is probably the perfect time to talk about the series of Demon Slayer. And it's a bit special this time around because today we're not just talking about the anime and or the manga of this series, we're talking about the newly released, well at least over here in America and many other countries in the world, Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba's Mugen Train movie. And I gotta say, I've honestly been super excited to see this movie just because for quite a while now, ever since the original release of the movie back in October over in Japan, the film itself literally went through the roofs of the box office over there, and I couldn't have been more excited to finally see at least an animated film in a while. And coming from not necessarily a huge fan of the series, overall the film surprised me in a lot more ways than I could imagine. So already just walking into the film, I had pretty big expectations for this movie, and I have to say those expectations were definitely met and surpassed during and after the movie. And not to mention with just how this movie brought in so much traffic, it was honestly something worth paying attention to, because coming from a manga reader of this arc, I have to say the execution, at least in terms of a movie for this arc, could it have been handled any better than from what was showcased in the theater. And the experience definitely felt as if it was just a different vibe from what we gotten from the anime, and I honestly don't know how to put it, but just the main key components would need to be mentioned are that of the choreography and cinematography, because you can just tell from this movie alone that the staff were really dedicated in making this seem as real as possible, at least when it comes to animation and a series like Demon Slayer. But enough rambling on for too long, you all probably wanted to hear more of my thoughts on the movie itself, so I suggest if you haven't seen the new Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie to probably go and check it out before watching the rest of this video, or stick around if you're a manga reader and you want to maybe listen and compare the differences from within the movie. But with that being said, let's just hop straight into my thoughts and discussion on the film of Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba's Mugen Train. So I might just end up talking about this video in segments, but I'm not sure how to go about this because there is just so much to talk about within this movie, and I don't usually free flow most of my videos, like barely any, but honestly this movie was just so good and there's just so much to talk about. So depending on how long this video may be, it just might be a decent sized video, but I don't know, we'll see. So jumping into the movie, I wasn't expecting a ton of different in quotations things. What I mean by this is that, for example, within other films like the two other My Hero Academia movies, the animation and cinematography for the most part relatively stayed the same from the anime and the movies. But within this Demon Slayer movie, right off the bat, we see just how much of the atmosphere looks so much different compared to what the anime is usually like. And of course, that tends to happen especially within animated films, but I just wasn't expecting a whole ton of that, especially from a series that already had an animated production. And we see a lot more of this especially from the effects team within the first encounter of the regular demons on the train, with how Rengoku's quick introduction takes place and how just everything felt so natural to the series while still having this cinematic feel to it. And coming from someone who read the manga shortly after the ending of the first season of the anime, coming back to watch this movie, a lot of things felt very vague, and I like that because I could just watch the movie and kind of recuperate my thoughts from what I've read after season 1. And going into it in terms of the story and pacing, it felt more impactful for sure and more motivational at times, and that's supposed to happen especially from an animated adaptation. But the way it was held from this movie felt intriguing enough to follow along from this film, and not just as a continuation of the story, and to follow along from, of course, our main character Tanjiro's perspective, as well as the other supporting characters. The plot-driven narrative of the story felt as if it was handled just so much better than the manga. Especially within the dream world of each and every character, the insight on Tanjiro specifically felt more impactful and interesting to some degree. It just made the fight with the lower moon a lot more entertaining and worth the wait, even more so in Rengoku's way of going about things with just his natural instincts and choking the little girl that he had in his dream. And to add on, it gave the four children that entered the dream world of each character a bit more of a spotlight than really what they should have been given, but it honestly was a good thing because the outcome for each of them felt satisfying enough to continue on with the story. Not to mention, but the environment of these characters were taken to during their mission to achieve a truly good felt dream was outstanding, and honestly felt wholesome to characters I really didn't give a hell about in the manga. And just to take that into account, it made even more so the integrity of Tanjiro slicing his own neck off more important to the whole plot of the story. And really, if I'm being honest, if I take off my knowledge cap and put on my meathead cap for just 1 minute and talk about the fights within this movie, the conversation about just everything from the music to the moment in time to the animation, literally everything within these fights were something an anime fan needs and wants to see, especially within a shonen movie like this one. Like, I'm not even kidding, it's honestly been such a long time since I've seen a really well animated shonen fight, despite maybe Jujutsu Kaisen and a few others. But to be honest, I just couldn't believe what I was watching at the time, because it's really true what they say, and the animation for Demon Demon Slayer is truly out of this world. And you typically wouldn't catch me saying that, but after watching not just the Lower Moon fight, but the fight with Akuza, like, it just blew my mind with how much buildup and hype led to this fight. And I want to get more into that, but first let me just tell you how I felt about the wrap up between both Tanjiro and Lower Moon 1. Basically, the conclusion was pretty satisfying. It had me in shock a few times though by just how hard this goal might be, because how full the train was with people, and I believe it had like 200 something passengers, which is insane considering Lower Moon 1 had full control over the train. But the tag team between both Inosuke and Tanjiro felt needed, especially when we know this early on in the story. Tanjiro just really isn't capable of doing a whole lot on his own at this moment in time. And with the conclusion of that fight and just everything that led up to that moment, the build up for the peak in the movie was really there, and the cooperation of characters felt needed for a moment. But when we got to the Akusa part, I was like, bro, this is seriously about to be one of the best fights I've seen animated within shonen history. And I can't even begin to describe what I was feeling during at that moment of the fight, because literally everything from the cinematography to the animation to the music, everything felt perfect, and I honestly felt like I was witnessing some sort of other different anime for a moment in time. Like, thinking about it now, if the internet went crazy over the fight between Tanjiro and Rui, they would go crazy if they had seen this fight animated like if it was a seasonal anime. From the manga, I was definitely surprised and my expectations were blown away at just how emotional it felt. Even from a manga reader's eyes, I couldn't fathom even tearing up while reading it in the manga, but the movie just made it so much more emotional. The pauses and the framing to the bitter soundtrack at times, it just made the whole experience so much more better than anything the manga has done before. And that's not to go and say that for every manga, because I do feel the opposite with some other anime and manga, but specifically Demon Slayer, man, does Ufotable know how to surprise an audience from a personally drawn manga. And you know, that's not just to mention the animation, but really everything this adaptation did was amazing in so many ways, and with the death of Rengoku, it felt a lot more natural and emotional than before from what was given in the manga. Even more so in the backstory of Rengoku and the final vision he sees of his mother when he dies. So if you're like me, you probably have Rengoku on a higher pedestal now, just because of how much emotion was brought up from his character during this movie. As well as Akuza and his introduction, it felt a lot more natural and fulfilled, so this movie overall just brought a really bigger light to the picture of how much better this series is than what people really make it out to be. I would say though, I probably have this movie above the first season overall, just because of how everything within the dream world more specifically was dealt with. I couldn't help but wonder just how much Tanjiro struggled during that time where he knew he could have had everything he ever wanted back, but he knew it just wasn't real. And like, honestly, now that I think about it, I would probably be the last person to hear this from, but from what Tanjiro goes through, especially when it comes to an early on developed main character, is genuinely insane. And mind you, this is like what, 50 to 60 chapters into the manga, so I feel like Tanjiro in terms of just early on development is just so good and so underrated now that I'm thinking about a shonen MC early on. But anyways, to kind of surface on just this quick thing I wanted to say towards the end of the video is like, where do we go from here? What I mean by this is that since I myself personally have only read up to like halfway through the red light district, I'm kind of wondering if just maybe the anime and potential future movie can really keep this going, because let's be honest, this movie legit broke records in Japan. I would honestly be super surprised if they don't make another canon movie for the manga of this series. It would just blow my mind if they don't, but if they do, I only see the series going upwards from here, because from what I've been told, the red light district is fire, which I can slightly vouch for halfway through the arc, and from what I've been told, after that is probably the peak of the series, and then after that, in the latter half, it slowly starts decreasing in terms of plot. I could honestly just see a fix up in the end from the anime to make it more natural than from what I've heard in the manga, but who knows. I just think that with this movie doing so well, just sometime later on down the line, another movie needs to come out, and it needs to come out hopefully after season 2 of the red light district. But with that, overall, this movie was phenomenal, and I strongly encourage literally anyone who's a fan of Demon Slayer and even just a fan of animated films to go and see this movie, because I personally was strongly surprised with just how much my expectations for this movie were blown by, and I honestly just can't wait to see what's next to come from the series of Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba. But to all of you who ended up making it to the end of the video, I hope you all did enjoy the video. And seriously, I mean this when I say go and watch this movie, because it literally was some of the best work I've seen from a shonen film in a while. And that honestly says something coming from a fan of many other shonen film works. But anyways, make sure before you click off the video to drop a comment on your thoughts on the video, and let me know your overall thoughts on the series of Demon Slayer, and if you haven't already seen the new Demon Slayer movie. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and join the Discord if you have not already. We got the Discord up and running again, so join the Discord in the link in the description box down below. Also, shout out to the first legendary member rank on the channel, the Meaning of Nerd. And with that, everyone, my Twitter is at AnimeAugie, and I'll make sure to catch each and every single one of you guys in the next video. Peace.